Section 14 of Orpheus with his Lute by W.M.L. Hutchinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Orpheus in the Underworld. Thus it was that love's twin brother, Grief, came to Orpheus on his marriage night, no more to leave him until the end. Now, when all the land had mourned for Eurydice many days, the king, her father, sent for him and said, "Husband of my daughter evil-starred, the gods have willed that I should go childless to my grave. But seeing you are now kin to me by marriage, you shall raise up an heir to my kingdom. Put away, therefore, unavailing sorrow, and choose you a wife among the noble maidens of the land, that I may see children born to you before I go the way of all flesh." But Orpheus answered that he would live and die the husband of Eurydice, and of none other. And when he saw that his answer displeased the old king, he departed out of the land of Thrace, and came again to his own country. For the ways of men were become hateful to him, and he thought to dwell solitary in the forest, and pass the remnant of his days in mourning his lost love. So Orpheus built him a lodge of green boughs in the heart of the woods, far from all resort of the forest folk. And while he brooded forlorn, Grief, the unseen comrade, taught him a minstrelsy strange and new. And by day he kept close, but by night he wandered abroad with his lute, singing of death and of love that cannot die. Now, as he thus roamed one night, filling the silent woods with melody, he came unawares to the glade of the Muses, and, wrapped in his song, saw not that they were near him as of old. Nor they only, for the lovely wood-nymphs peeped from the trees around, and the goat-foot fawns, their playfellows, with every beast and bird that wakes by night, lurked in the tangled undergrowth, all listening spellbound to the voice and lute of Orpheus. He ceased, and like one aroused from a dream, saw the nine sitting with down-dropped brows beside their enchanted well, and all save one were weeping. But the face of Urania was transfigured by a smile ineffable as she rose up and took him by the hand. "Minstrel," she said, "you have learned the last lesson. This is the song I've waited for, and the hour of your power is come. Look around you, Orpheus. Behold these tears upon immortal eyelids. See yonder the woodland creatures. Into them, the soulless, your music has breathed a soul. Nay, things without sense or life blindly obey its call." She pointed to where an opening in the glade gave prospect of the neighboring hill, and wondrous was the sight that Orpheus saw. The hill's rocky crest hung forward like the head of one who listens, and down its sides moved a green phalanx of nodding larches. "Oh," he cried, stung by a great sudden thought, "if there be in music such compelling art, and the hour of my power is come, can I not win back Eurydice from the realm of souls? By the grace you have ever shown me, heavenly Muses, tell me how I may reach the underworld where she abides, for I will sing to Pluto on his throne, entreating him to give me back my bride. And if I cannot move the dark king to set her free, then let him keep me captive too, that I may dwell with her among the dead." "We cannot guide you to that world, my child," said Calliope. "Not one of the immortals may breathe its gloomy air, save Hermes only, who shepherds souls on their way thither. And none among living mortals can cross its threshold but those few on whom the high gods have looked with peculiar favor. Such are the terrors that they must encounter. But since you are bent upon that perilous journey, betake yourself to far Eleusis. There entreat guidance from the mother, for she herself has mourned a lost one, and she has compassion on all who sorrow." Silently then the nine beckoned Orpheus to the well side, and as he gazed on the water, the face of Eurydice rose like a pale star from its shadowy depths, and its ripples changed into the ripples of her dusky hair. With a passionate cry, he bent to kiss those lips, but as the cold wave touched his own, the vision dissolved. A chill like death benumbed his sense, and when he came to himself, he was lying alone in the sunlit forest beside a bubbling spring. Once more Orpheus fared southward with his lute. But lute and minstrel were silent now. The song he meditated as he went was not for mortal ears or the cheerful light of day. At last he came at sundown to a fair plain bordering the southern sea. A highway ran through the midst of it, but it seemed uninhabited, and the tired wayfarer, who had fasted since daybreak, saw that he must pass the night there unsheltered and unfed. Now, as he lay by the roadside, with a stone for his pillow, the sound of many voices chanting and a host of twinkling lights drew near in the gathering dusk. Orpheus looked and listened with a beating heart. It was the chanting he had heard in that dream of long ago, when the Muses sang to him of Demeter and her quarry, and he knew that these were the pilgrims coming to Eleusis along the sacred way. Nearer they came, the torchlight shining on their rapt faces, and even as in his dream he followed the marching throng. At length the pillars of a great gateway loomed before them. The chanting ceased, and the torches were extinguished as the long procession wound its way into the sanctuary of the goddesses. In silence and utter darkness, the pilgrims were led by unseen guides onward and onward. For hours, it seemed, they paced along the echoing pavement of courts or corridors. Then, all at once, they stood in a vast hall, ablaze with light from 1,000 cressets. When his eyes undazzled, Orpheus saw that rows of stone steps encircled the hall, whereon the pilgrims took their places, marshaled by white-robed priests, and as they seated themselves, a great voice cried aloud, "Pure ye are come to the pure. Blessed are the eyes that see, and the ears that hear the things which are done in this place and hour. But of those things I must needs keep silence, for the lips of the pilgrims were sealed by vows of secrecy, and this much only is known from the witness of the men of old, that whoso beheld them was changed in heart and mind thenceforward, and walked in innocency all his days, until he passed, not without hope, through the grave and gate of death." Now, while Orpheus looked upon these mysteries, he prayed fervently to the Divine Mother who had known love and sorrow, and it was revealed to him that he should find a descent to the underworld on the headland of Taenarum. And on the morrow he began his journey to that place, where, being come at last, he saw a cavern in the midst of a gloomy wood. Darksome was the cavern, but he entered it boldly, and groped his way along its windings, ever downward and downward, until a wan and sickly light dawned upon him from a huge rocky doorway. Across its threshold lay a grisly hound, in size like unto a bull, and at the sound of footsteps he reared 3 heads, and from 3 triple-fanged mouths sent forth a blood-curdling growl. Soon as the monster saw Orpheus, the bristles rose upon his coal-black hide, and, with wide-open jaws, he gathered himself for a spring. But the minstrel struck his lute, and at its sweet appeasing harmony the hound of Pluto laid him down again, and his fiery eyes closed in slumber. Lightly then Orpheus stepped past the guardian of the threshold, and wended on his way. Next he came to a grey and sluggish stream, and behold, the hither bank was thronged with shadowy forms, who made moan in thin, shrill voices, and stretched their arms yearningly towards the further shore. From thence came a skiff rowed by a hoary bearded man, and he cried, "Let the dead who have received due rites of funeral embark. None else do I, Charon the ferryman, suffer to cross this river of lamentation." Then such of the spirits as showed him a certain token he ferried over in his boat, which, though crank and crazy, sank no lower under that freight. But the rest he thrust away, despite their piteous entreaties. Twice the ferryman returned, And the second time Orpheus embarked among the eager ghosts. "Who is this," cried Charon suddenly, "that weighs down my skiff's prow?" And staring fiercely upon Orpheus, "Thou art flesh and blood," he said. "What dost thou here among those who have passed the tomb?" With that he caught up a pole to thrust him overboard, but straightway the minstrel chanted a stave of melody so enthralling that Charon bent him to the oar again, nodding his ancient head and keeping time with measured strokes till the skiff touched shore. And lightly stepped Orpheus to land, and hied onwards through a gloomy valley. After this he saw a troop of maidens drawing water from a spring in earthen pitchers, but so fast as they filled them, the pitchers were empty again, for they were pierced with as many holes as a sieve. "Alas, maidens," said he, "who has doomed you to this fruitless labor?" "It is the punishment of our sin," they answered. "We are the Danaids, princesses of Argos, who slew our bridegrooms rather than endure the toilsome lot of wives. Now, therefore, we toil forever to no purpose. Yet there is one yonder who would gladly change his task for ours." Then Orpheus was ware of a man, well knit and tall, who by sheer strength pushed a huge round boulder before him up a steep hillside. Staggering and panting, he gained the summit, and lo, the great stone slipped from his grasp and rolled thundering to the plain, and the man had no sooner descended than he began that labor anew. But a thought came to Orpheus. He struck his lute as the boulder again touched the hilltop, and forthwith it stood still. Play on, thou wondrous minstrel," said the man, "and give me respite, if but for some brief moments." "Willingly," said Orpheus, "if you will tell me who you are, and what brought you to this pass." "I am called Sisyphus," answered the other. "King was I in famous Corinth, and had a name for subtleness of wit beyond all mortals, so that Zeus himself disdained not to take counsel with me as with a friend. But that friendship was my bane, for he told me a certain secret thing under pledge of my silence, and by a rich bribe I was tempted to reveal it to him of all others whom I had sworn should never learn of it. Therefore has Zeus laid on me this heavy burden forever, because I could not bear the light burden of a secret." Orpheus could not linger, but he ceased not from his playing as he went onwards, and for so long as the sound of his lute reached the hill, Sisyphus rested from his toil. A little further in the vale, Orpheus saw before him a great wheel fixed to a pillar, and the wheel spun round and round faster than chariot wheels can spin when the charioteer drives furiously in a race of steeds. But as he drew near, the wheel stood still, and he saw that one wearing a kingly crown lay thereon, his outstretched limbs bound to the four spokes. "Play on, thou wondrous minstrel," cried the crowned figure, "and give me respite, how brief soever, from the dizzy whirl that torments my brain." "That will I," said Orpheus, "if you will tell me your name, and how you fell into this evil plight." "I am Ixion, a prince of high renown," said he upon the wheel, "and for a double crime I suffer this torture without end. First of mortals was I to shed the blood of a near kinsman, but from that guilt Zeus vouchsafed to cleanse me, when I fled a suppliant to his altar. Yea, and he showed me marvelous favor, granting me to sit with him at the heavenly feast. But in the prideful folly of my heart I deemed myself his equal, and sought to win the love of his glorious queen, profaning the sacred tie that binds host and guest. Then Zeus sent a phantom in her likeness to me by night, that he might prove me to the uttermost. And as I embraced the seeming goddess, she dissolved into a cloud, and I was hurled headlong to this place of doom. Thou hast seen, perchance, the spell maidens practice to draw home a recreant lover, how they twirl and twirl a wheel with a speckled wry neck tied thereon. Behold, I am made into the counterfeit of that love charm, for as much as I madly hoped to cast love glamour over the bride of Zeus. Now, when Orpheus had left that chief of sinners, he came forth of the valley upon wide and level meads, flowering with asphodel, where the spirits of ancient heroes roamed singly or in troops. Then met him a youth of noble mien in the garb of a hunter, and said, Newcomer to these shades, tell me of thy courtesy. Knowest thou the land of Calydon? Thence came I not long since, and fain would hear some tidings of my home. Thus far had he spoken, when his eye fell on the shadow that Orpheus cast. For in that light, like a waning moon's, it showed black upon the meadow grass. And he cried, Thou art no shadowless spirit, but a living man. Who art thou, minstrel, and how camest thou hither? And when he heard the tale of Eurydice, the youth wept for pity. Gentle shade, said Orpheus, grieved at heart am I that I can tell you nothing of Calydon, your homeland, for the very name of it is unknown to me. But I pray you, let me know the name and fortunes of one so worthy to be remembered. Then said the youth with tears, Good were it, Orpheus, for the race of mortals, that they had never been born, nor looked upon the sunlight. For who amongst us may turn aside the doom that comes of the gods? I am Meleager, son of Oeneus, king in Calydon, whom a pitiless woman reft of life when it was at the sweetest. In the hour of my birth, the sister fates drew near to Althea, my mother, and gave her a half-consumed brand from the hearth, saying that my life should last until the hour when the rest of that brand was burned. Wherefore she kept it safe, hidden in a coffer. Now the king, my father, offered sacrifices of thanksgiving to all the gods for the birth of his son, save to Artemis, lady of the wild things, and her he forgot through heedlessness. And the vengeful goddess, biding her time until I came to manhood, then sent a huge wild boar to ravage the land, which laid waste all our fields, and slew the younglings of the flocks, aye, and whatsoever men he encountered, in his deadly rage. When this was noised abroad, princes and chiefs from far and near gathered to my father's house for the hunting of that monster, and a mighty chase began among the hills. The fell beast turned not once nor twice upon the hunters, and his tusks dealt death to 10 of the boldest, ere my javelin pierced his brain. Then, woe is me, fierce disputing arose among us for the spoils of his carcass. For 2 of my mother's brethren were the first to wound the boar, and claimed a share in the prize, which I would gladly have yielded. But my father withstood them, saying none but the slayer should take of the spoil. Soon all our company waxed hot upon this side or that, and from high words the 2 parties came quickly to weapon play. Blindly we fought, like men smitten with evil madness, and in the melee the 2 princes, brethren of my mother, fell by this luckless hand. What did Althea in her passionate mood when we brought home those evil tidings? Alas, she snatched the brand from its hiding place and cast it on the glowing hearth, and cried, One life I will have for those 2 so dear to me. And with the burning of the brand, I felt the blood ebb from my heart like an ebbing tide, and the sweet life fail from within me. As the last red embers died, my spirit fled, wailing for youth's flower untimely blasted. When he had thus spoken, the shade of Meleager made a sorrowful gesture of farewell, and would have turned away, but Orpheus prayed him to tell where stood the dwelling of Hades' king. Straight onward lies your way, answered the other. Beyond these mourning meadows thou wilt come to a vale of cypress, and in the midst of the vale stands the house of Pluto. Mayest thou find grace, true lover, with her who is the light of that dim abode. So Orpheus went his way over the fields of asphodel, and as he went he beheld the mighty shades of captains and of kings stalking majestically as in life. He saw the long vanished beauty of the queens of old, and all those flowers of maidenhood that death had gathered to adorn his peaceful garden. Many a lover, many a bride sat musing on lost delight under boughs of weeping willow. Many a little child played in the cool meadow grass. But Orpheus tarried not to hold parley with young or old, for now he saw the dark cypress grove at hand, and knew that he was come to his journey's end. Now, as he entered the grove, he saw two carven chairs of black marble, one on the right hand and the other on the left. That on the right was empty, but in the other a tall young man was sitting, clad in rich armor like a king's son. He sat with chin resting on his hand and eyes fixed upon the ground, and when Orpheus greeted him, he neither spoke nor moved. So still he was that the minstrel would have deemed him a graven image, but he saw that he breathed and cast a shadow on the greensward. This hapless prince, he thought, is held here, alive among the dead, by some enchantment. I will sit down a while in yonder chair, and try whether my lute cannot break the spell. But as he approached the other chair, one stepped forth from among the cypresses, crying, "Beware that perilous seat, Orpheus, son of the Muse, for the first touch thereof will root thee to the spot, motionless and dumb, like him thou wouldst deliver." He who thus spoke was an aged man of lofty stature and countenance, mild but majestic, with long snowy hair and beard. He wore the white fillet and laurel wreath of Apollo's priests, and a seer's netted mantle hung from his shoulders. With meet reverence, Orpheus gave him thanks for his warning, and asked who he was. "I ask not," he added, "how you know my name and parentage, for I perceive you are a seer." And even as he spoke, he marked with wonder the seer's shadow on the grass. Then said the old man, "In me, Orpheus, thou seest not, as thou deemest, a living man, but one who alone of the dead wears yet his form of flesh and blood, by the especial grace of Queen Persephone. I am Tiresias of Thebes, whose life the gods prolonged over 5 generations of men, and gave me also the gift of prophecy to atone for a punishment I had not merited. For while once in my youth I strayed by a riverside, I came unawares upon glorious Athena, as she bathed with a company of the water nymphs, and the sight of her smote me with blindness. Now, because the virgin goddess had herself invoked that doom upon whosoever should dare look on her divinity disrobed, she could not restore my eyesight, but because I had not sinned against her wilfully, she prevailed with Zeus and with Apollo to bestow on me the amends of which I have spoken. And when death claimed me at last, Persephone granted me this boon also, that with the same eyes so long darkened on earth, I should behold her beauty and all the hidden wonders of this nether world." "Great seer," said Orpheus, "I heard your name from the lips of the Muses in the days of my childhood. Little dreamed I then that ever I should behold you face to face. It needs not to tell you on what errand I seek the house of Pluto, for you know things past and things present and things to come. But tell me, if it please you, who it is that sits charmed on yonder seat of marble. So noble are his looks that I long to undo the enchantment that binds him there." "My son," answered Tiresias, "by the power of thine art thou canst indeed break his trance, even as thou didst stay the wheel of Ixion and the stone of Sisyphus. But there is no power in earth or heaven that can set free these captives until they have paid to the uttermost the price of their transgressions. For the law that the wrongdoer shall suffer late or soon is from of old and standeth fast forever. Forbear, therefore, to arouse Pirithous, so is this prince called, since that were but to frustrate the mercy Persephone has shown him in granting him oblivion of his doom. Pass on thy way, or learn from me and not from him, why he dwells alive among the dead. Speak then, I pray you, wise Tiresias, said Orpheus, for this is the strangest sight I have seen in Hades, and the most piteous, and scarce can I look on it without tears. Alas, that strength and beauty like a god's should find no other end than this. He looks, methinks, as the young Ares might, when the giants he warred against prisoned him underground. And can it be that aught of evil housed in so fair a tabernacle? Good things strove to dwell there, answered the seer, but one ill spirit drove them forth, and that was pride. This Pirithous was the son of King Ixion, and like his father, he feared not the gods, neither regarded man, but did whatsoever was right in his own eyes, trusting in his heart that he should never be cast down. Howbeit he was without guile, loving truth in word and deed, a brave and generous foe, and of all friends the most loyal. Now when Ixion vanished from among men, Pirithous reigned in his stead, and at that same time there arose a king in famous Athens, Theseus by name, whose prowess as a warrior was noised abroad through all the lands of Greece. It was said this young champion had ridded his kingdom of the dreaded wild beasts and yet more savage robbers who infested it with his single sword, and marvelous tales were told also of his adventures overseas. Pirithous listened greedily to all that he could hear concerning Theseus, until at last he grew so enamored of him by report that he resolved to win his friendship at all costs. But in his pride he said, "This bravest of men shall know me for his equal before I ask him to call me friend." And straightway he led an army against Athens, and when Theseus with his host came forth to give them battle, Pirithous challenged him to single combat. And so equally matched were those two in strength and skill that neither could gain the least advantage, nor so much as draw blood from each other, long and desperately though they encountered. At last, when both were well nigh spent, Theseus flung down his sword and cried, "Come to my arms, valiant stranger. Thou and I must be brothers henceforth, for in thee I have met my peer, and my heart goes out to thee already." Joyfully then Pirithous embraced him, and confessed his purpose in the challenge. "I could not rest," he said, "until I had proved myself worthy, if not of thy love, Theseus, at least of thy sword." When Theseus heard this, he praised the gods who had sent him such a friend, and the two princes took an oath together to be true comrades to the death. But after this the ambition of Pirithous passed all bounds, and not content to be equaled in renown with the most illustrious of mortals, he aspired to win yet greater glory by setting his strength against a foe divine. Yes, in the madness of his overweening pride, he boasted that he would go sword in hand to the palace of King Pluto and carry off his queen by force. Theseus would fain have dissuaded him from that impious raid, but Pirithous would heed no warning. "Come thou also," said he, "unless thy heart fails thee, that I deemed fearless as mine own. What? Shall not our two swords put to rout 1,000,000 phantoms? Come, and thou shalt see how powerless against good steel are all those goblin shapes that old wives tell of to fright unruly babes. And when we have brought that fair queen back to the light of day, we shall cast lots whose bride she shall be, mine or thine." Then Theseus yielded, as was ever his wont, to his comrade of more imperious soul, and they went down together through the cavern of Tainarum. Now, when they came to the portal where Cerberus keeps guard, the triple-headed hound rushed upon them, baying fearsomely. But they drew their glittering falchions and brandished them as it were sudden lightning before his eyes, so that he cowered down amazed. And having passed that gateway, the two comrades saw a host of eldritch creatures barring their onward road. Harpies, with the bodies and talons of vultures, and the heads of women. Fire-breathing chimeras, in shape half goat, half lion. The dreadful forms of the Furies, whose snaky locks dripped gore. And all those grisly and nameless phantasms that haunt the dreams of madness. But on strode the undaunted pair, and clove their way with brandished swords through the crowd of gibbering shadows, and came to the Ferry of Souls. Nor durst Charon refuse them passage, for they seemed to him gods, or the sons of gods, so fair and terrible appeared they in their shining armor, and with like awe did the troops of spirits stand at gaze while they hied along the asphodel meadows. It was of me that Prometheus asked guidance to the house of Pluto, and I led the way in silence, knowing the thing ordained. When we came even to this spot, Hecate, queen of witches, stood before us in her beauty malign, and with a deep obeisance she greeted both Theseus and Prometheus, praising their valor and wishing good fortune to their enterprise. And when they asked her who she was, "I am the handmaid of Persephone," said she. "Your coming, gallant princes, is known to my lady and mistress, who desires nothing better than to fly with you from her tyrant lord. She sends you word by me that you will fare best if you await here a signal that the moment is come to surprise King Pluto at his carousal. Rest yonder a little while, until you see the light of a torch that I shall wave from the palace gates. Then hasten forwards with a good courage, for all shall be well." So saying, Hecate pointed to these marble stairs, and glided away amongst the trees. The two comrades seated themselves where the witch bade them, and knew too late the snare she had spread for them, and the awful power of the nether gods. Tiresias ceased, but his lips moved inaudibly, and he lifted his arms in the attitude of prayer. Still Orpheus lingered, and presently the seer turned to him and asked, "Have I not told thee all thou wouldst know, my son?" "Not all," said Orpheus, glancing towards the empty chair, "since Theseus, as it seems, has escaped his doom." "Yes, Orpheus," replied Tiresias, for his guilt was not as his comrades', seeing he but followed where Prometheus led. So for him there was a pardon, and he reigns yet in fair-walled Athens. "And could he leave Prometheus here?" cried Orpheus. "Was that the loyalty he had sworn?" "Judge him not," said Tiresias, "until thou hast heard the rest. There came hither not long since that mighty helper of men whose fame is gone out into all lands, even Heracles. For the king of Argos, whom he served 12 years by decree of fate, laid many and grievous tasks upon him, and the last was that he should bring him the hound of Pluto. So Heracles went down to Hades' gate and seized the monster with his invincible hands, and would have dragged him straightway to upper earth, but there came to him a messenger from Pluto, offering ransom for Cerberus. Then Heracles said he would restore the hound after showing him to the king of Argos, if Pluto would release unto him Theseus of Athens, for Theseus was very dear to Heracles, and had done him service of old. So Theseus was set free, but he utterly refused to go with Heracles unless his comrade were delivered also, until Prometheus charged him in the name of their great love not to deny him one last boon. "All else I can endure," he said, "but the bitterness of seeing thee suffer for my fault. Spare me that worst of pangs, my Theseus. Give me instead the solace of knowing thou dwellest free and glorious in the land of the living. Ah, trust me, I cannot be all unhappy in these bonds, while it is well with thee, friend of my heart." Thus did Pirithous prevail on Theseus to depart, and he took farewell of him, even smiling, though Theseus could scarce speak for tears. But when the prisoner was left alone, Queen Persephone herself drew near him with compassionate looks, and on his head, bowed in silent anguish, she sprinkled juice of the white poppies she carried. And by the virtue of that sweet oblivious antidote Pirithous is lapped in the trance slumber thou beholdest. Now, Orpheus, my tale is fully told, and I bid thee good speed ere we part. A little further through the vale, and thou comest to the house of Pluto. Enter boldly, for none will hinder thee, seeing thou hast found favor with our queen. In token whereof, know that by her command I met thee here, to warn thee of the magic seat. With these words the ancient seer departed to his own place, and Orpheus hastened onward through the dark cypress grove. End of Orpheus in the Underworld. Read by Mark Harrington, Framingham, Massachusetts.